We're about to begin the service for Mr. Lawrence, Larry, Stuart, Yellin. I would ask if any of you have a cellular device to please turn it to the off position. Officiating our service today will be Rabbi Joel Gutstein.
We are gathered here today to celebrate really the life of Larry Yellin, Eliezer ben Chaim Menachem Mendel, and Dvar Esther. We'll begin with Tehillim, which will be led by Rabbi Matenki.
אשרי האיש אשר לא הלך בעצת רשעים ובדרך חטאים לא עמד ובמושב לצים לא ישב כי בתורת אדוני חפצו ותורתו יגע יומם ולילה והיה כעץ שתול על פלגי מים אשר פריו ייתן בעתו ועלהו לא ייבול וכל אשר יעשה יצליח לא כן הרשעים כי אם כמות אשר תדפנו רוח על כן לא יקומו רשעים במשפט וחטאים בעדת צדיקים כי יודע אדוני דרך צדיקים ודרך רשעים תאבד. מזמור לדוד, אדוני מי יגור באוהליך, מי ישכון בהר קודשך. הולך תמים ופועל צדק ודובר אמת בלבבו. לא רגל על לשונו, לא עשה לרעהו רעה וחרפה לא נשא לקרובו. נבזה בעיניו נמאס ואת ירא אדוני יכבד. נשבע להרע ולא ימיר. כספו לא נתן בנשך ושוחד על נקי לא לקח, עושה אלה לא ימות לעולם.
Larry was blessed with a long and productive life. So what was the secret to his longevity? The Talmud, we frequently find the question, Bameh rach yamim. And what merit did you earn such length of days? So the rabbis in the Talmud never answered, I watched my diet, I was careful about my cholesterol, I exercised daily. Not that those are not important, but that's not the reason the rabbis of the Talmud ascribe to longevity. It's always some mitzvah, some good deed, some sensitivity toward others, that they gave credit for their longevity. So one of the answers we find in the Talmud is nobody ever preceded me to shul. I was always the first one there. Indeed, one of our kids asked Larry this question several years ago, what merit did you earn such length of days, such good health? So Larry's response was, he always made an effort to daven with a minyan. Larry's, that's what kept him going. That was his source of life. Even when the Yellins drove from here to Florida, they would make a stop or two along the way in Kentucky or Georgia, just so Larry could daven with a minyan. Those of us who attend the minyan on a daily basis, whether in the morning or evening, know the truth of that statement. It should be a lesson. When Larry was in town, he was at every minyan, at every class. Those of us who came to the pre-COVID 6 a.m. Daf Yomi know that Larry was usually the first one in the building. We came at 6 a.m. He already had his talis and tefillin on and already had begun the preliminary parts of the Shachari service. You know, it's amazing, but the 94-year-old person, could beat you to shul in the morning. And if Larry could not make it to a minyan, he always found another minyan that worked for his schedule. And in truth, the credit was just not his. It's also Evelyn's. If it required making it to a minyan or a class, so Evelyn made sure that Larry was able to get there. And just as an aside, it might also, his connection to shul might have been genetic. He frequently spoke at Shalosh Shudas, and he mentioned once that his grandparents met on the stairway of a shul in Tiktin. And he jokingly would say that it was love at first flight. In shul, so as I said, the Yellin sponsored Shalosh Shudas on several occasions. And Larry spoke, and whenever they sponsored, he'd speak about his experiences growing up in Aurora, his experiences in the United States Army during World War II. His stories were fascinating. Everybody listened intently. In truth, we could have listened for hours. We had to daven Marav. From his stories in the army, so we knew he was a dedicated soldier. He was also a decorated soldier. But he didn't only see himself as an American soldier, he viewed himself as a soldier in the army of God, representative of Torah, Judaism, and the Jewish people. So one of the times at Shalashudas, he mentioned his mother told him when he was younger to make sure that people know that you are a proud Jew. And Larry took that message to heart. It drove him to put on tefillin in the army at the expense of his breakfast time, even when his commander, who was a Jew named Cohn, objected. Later on, Cohn's superior ordered him to allow Larry to put on tefillin and give him full breakfast time. His mother's message inspired Larry to keep kosher in the army by volunteering to serve the food in the mess hall so he could get to the vegetables before they were cooked. It encouraged him, and miraculously, on the first night of Pesach in 1945, there was a Christian chaplain whom we knew from Wheaton, delivered matzahs to him while he was on guard duty along the banks of the Rhine River. And that made it possible for Larry to have, and a couple of his comrades, to make a Seder and celebrate Pesach. And the message also encouraged him, and the very next morning, he found some carts along a walking path. He followed the path, he found the Nazi death camp. And there were no Nazis in sight. They had abandoned the camp, but the people were left, and the Jews were left there behind the fence. So he liberated that death camp. Then he led later on, he led a mincha service for the surviving Jews. He made a molly for those who had been murdered. He helped them and gave them encouragement. His mother's message drove him to found a shul in Manila and also to arrange with his commander in the Philippines to be able to have services on Shabbos morning in the palace of General Douglas MacArthur. And this drive to be a proud Jew was the theme of his life. The Yellin's business was a Broadway appliance in Aurora. Now, Larry and Evelyn ran Broadway appliance in Aurora according to Jewish law because God was a member of the business. He was also a partner. They were closed on Shabbos, no matter how many customers it meant turning away. Torah says don't work on Shabbos, and there is no way that they were going to violate the Shabbos. Larry mentioned that once also at Shalashudas, in the spirit of Shabbos, was either his father or grandfather ran for sheriff in Aurora, and he put up signs that said, if Yellin's elected, you'll be protected. No Saturday calls. The Yellins, they developed a worldwide reputation from their business. They met a bus driver in Jerusalem's Katamon neighborhood whose wife was in desperate need of a working refrigerator. Soon thereafter, the other bus drivers their wives also needed working refrigerators. And so was born the export division of Broadway Appliance, and through which the Yellins were able to assist numerous Jews worldwide. Even the wife of the late Israeli president, Chaim Herzog, called them to consult about appliances. It wasn't only Jews that they assisted. When Israel and Iran had diplomatic relations, there was an Iranian who wanted an air conditioner. He was given the name of Broadway Appliance, and one of the largest overseas suppliers of electronic appliances. The Yellins made the arrangements for the air conditioner to be sent to Iran, and the Iranian, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, was happy to have his air conditioner. That's how Pahlavi, who is better known to the world as the Shah of Iran, became a customer of the Yellins. They also received a thank you letter from one of the popes. He also needed an air conditioner. As great as Larry was, and he was really a superhuman being, a super person, he wasn't in it alone. For 74 years, just again, the number is just astounding, he had his Ashes Chayil Evelyn at his side. And they were more than just a married couple. So a while back, Susie described them that they were also best friends. They did for each other whatever was necessary. She never left his side. These past 4 weeks, when Larry was in the hospital, it wasn't easy. Evelyn stayed from morning until evening, and as long as the hospital was open to visitors, she was there. She stayed at the apartment of the Chicago Mitzvah campaign over Shabbos, like 4 weeks in a row. It wasn't easy. And throughout, she remained constantly upbeat, always saying Baruch Hashem, continuing smiling and showing concern for others. The Yellins always keep God in mind. Their house is a house of God. The Yellins built their household not just for themselves. They built a home for the Jewish people. And that's because, again, God is a constant presence in their home. Larry constantly said it. Evelyn is constantly saying it. Their dedication to the state of Israel and the Jewish people in general went above and beyond. Larry and Evelyn even met through a mutual devotion to the Zionist cause. She was a chairperson for the Zionist convention. Larry was a delegate from the University of Chicago. In the heat of the discussions, Evelyn did not call upon Larry to introduce his resolution. Not one to make a fuss. Larry never made a fuss over anything. In fact, if there was something in shul, a little more singing, he would gently tell us, maybe sing the Hallel, just a little more. He was always gentle about it. But not making a fuss, Larry approached Evelyn after the meeting, asked him why she had passed him up. He suggested that she make up the snub by allowing him to take her out to dinner, and the rest was history. Through having God as a member of the household, they were also dedicated to sanctifying the name of God, making a good name for the Jewish people. In the days when it was not easy being a fully Orthodox Jew, the Yellins successfully raised a religious family dedicated to the Jewish people, the state of Israel, and in a city not known for an overwhelming Jewish community in Aurora. Every Shabbos, Larry and Evelyn, they'd walk together with the family over a mile to the shul. And when the shul no longer kept to Orthodox standards, then they came to our neighborhood, sometimes staying near the yeshiva and davening in the yeshiva, other times staying down the block and across the street at the hotel. Then they bought an apartment next door to the shul. And they were willing to make whatever sacrifice was necessary just to remain practicing Jews in the fullest sense. They were determined to give their daughters proper Jewish educations. That meant sending them to board by the academy or taking the family to Israel for a year. They committed themselves to raising a religious family devoted to the cause of the Jewish people. Sharon, Linda, Susie, Dina, Judy Aleh Shalom, and their families are tributes to the efforts of Larry and Evelyn. Their dedication to their parents is also beautiful and inspiring throughout the recent difficulties. At least one of the sisters was always here to do whatever their parents needed. Susie mentioned a few months ago that she took Larry to get a new passport. His old passport was expiring. He expressed a desire to be in Israel for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. He'll be spending the holidays in Israel, not the way we wish to see it. Larry, he was a proud soldier to the end. He was a true Jewish hero of whom we are so proud. We'll miss him dearly. At this point, we am honored to call upon Rabbi David Goldberg, the Rosh Hashiva of Tells Cleveland, dear nephew of Evelyn and Larry. Afterwards will be Rabbi Eitan Allen, the Rabbi of Park Plaza, then Dina Yellin Fuchsbrummer, their daughter, and Dr. Moshe Fuchsbrummer, their son-in-law, Daniel Fuchsbrummer, the youngest grandchild, and Danielle Fisher, the oldest grandchild.
We've come together to give the Kavod Achron to Rabbi Eliezer and Reb Chaim Menachem Mendel. To us, it was Uncle Larry. I want to begin what I'm going to say, that my relationship with my uncle, it wasn't just the fact he was my only uncle. The Goldbergs only had one uncle. He was that one. But I want to say over now something that I said in the yeshiva this Friday night. Why I was so proud to be his nephew. I called the Bochum together. I told them my uncle passed away. I said, I want to tell you who my uncle was. I asked a question. The first pasuk in Sefer Shmois says, Yaakov Avinu went down, Eila Shmois b'nei Yisrael, Klal Yisrael went down to Mitzrayim, counts the names of the Shvatim, they came with Yaakov. And the last was the part that says, Yosef hoya b'Mitzrayim. Yosef was in Egypt. So Rashi asks the obvious question. We know that Joseph was in Egypt. Oh, Sefer Bereshis is about that. Why does it have to repeat it again? So Rashi says, he wants to tell us that Yosef, he was the same tzaddik that he was when he was in Yaakov's house. And then when he went down to Mitzrayim and Potiphar's house. And then when he became the king, he remained the same tzaddik. That's why it says, V'Yosef hoya b'Mitzrayim. Because the question is, if you want to say a eulogy of Yosef, it belongs at the end of Parshas Bereshis, and the end of Echi, when the Torah finishes talking about the story of Joseph in Mitzrayim. Say Yosef died when he was 100 years old, and say the eulogy that he stayed at Tzaddik for the whole life. Why is it written in the beginning of Shmois? And Klal Yisrael is going down now to Golos. It doesn't belong there. That's the question that I asked the Bachram. I said, I'm going to tell you the answer. What I believe is, I told him that 2 weeks ago, I went to visit my uncle. Knew he wasn't feeling good, it was serious. I went to him in the hospital. And I come in. Devlin was there, Susie was there, my wife was there. As soon as he sees me, David, what's the last sefer that you put out? So the last sefer was about chinuch habon, educating children. He says, tell me something from it. I said, okay, I'll tell you a question. And I asked him a question. The question was, how did Yosef raise 2 sons in Mitzrayim, Ephraim and Manasseh? They became Shvatim and Klal Yisrael. How did he do that? They never saw his father Yitzchak. They never saw his grandfather, their grandfather Avram Avinu. They never went into a shul. They never had no Jewish friends. How did he raise these 2 boys in Mitzrayim that these Ephraim and Manasseh should become Shvatim and Shiftikor? And he looked at him and he said, and Tevin heard it, my wife heard it, like an aurora. Like an aurora. And that's what I told the Bochum, I'll tell you what it means in Aurora. Aurora, Illinois is a small town. Used to be Jewish people there. When the children were raised, there was nothing there. They go to public school. 6 miles, 3 miles one way, 3 miles back, every Shabbos to go to shul. Like Gutstein mentioned. Biggest department store in Aurora, Illinois, closed Shabbos. You know what that means? The children saw this. They used to come to our house every year, Simchas Torah. Came Simchas Torah. The Yellins are coming. It was Yontif. They're coming for Simchas Torah. What does Simchas Torah mean? His life was Simchas Torah. First to the Kovas in this shul, and then to the Weiznerov and Telz Yeshiva, then up to this, to Peterson Park, come back. He couldn't get enough of it. His whole life was Simchas Torah. We saw that. He sat with him by the table at Dvar Torah. The straightness of machshava, clarity, yashrus. You know what they mean? Straight. Find the person who's straight. Not easy today. An honest person. This is the way he raised the children. It was mentioned. When they had to go to school, send them away. Send them to our house. Stay in Chicago. Not easy. And then when the shul was unacceptable, every week to go away, we have to go, we got to go to a shul. This shul, that shul. But he loved mitzvahs. He loved it. He thrived on it. When he started going to Israel, he started his business up and back, bought a house in Israel. We were there for a year, till he came. Every yontif in Israel, and in Israel, what did he do in Israel? By David Soloveitchik, by this Rosh Hashiva, by that one, Matzah, Sukkah. That was his life. He lived these things. That was his life. And then in the later years, this is This is when he, I think it was 83 when he started it. Art school made Gemaras for Klal Yisrael. The people, he didn't have the privilege of going to a yeshiva. We went to a yeshiva. I didn't have the nisyonis, the test that he was put through. He never went to a yeshiva. But then he started learning Gemara. And he took to it like a fish to water. Every day, daf hayomi. He finished Shas. I spoke about it at the Siyam Shas in Cleveland. First time he finished Shas. You know what that is? A person never went to a yeshiva, who were born and raised in rural Illinois. But that's how he raised these children. You know how Yosef did it in Mitzrayim? Because they saw how Yosef lived. They had no outside help. And it can be done. And what you see, the children, all of them, children, grandchildren, Shomer Shabbos, Shomer Torah Kashrus. This is a miracle in the United States of America. And came from this, that my aunt and my uncle put into a family in rural Illinois. We don't understand how great this is. And that's what I told the broker, how I'm proud that he was my uncle. Back to the question. So why didn't the Torah write about Yosef? Why didn't this whole say Hesper? Why didn't it say it in the end of Vayechi? Because it wrote it in the beginning of Shmois, because Rebbeinu Hashem was telling Klal Yisrael, Yankov, you're going now to Mitzrayim. This is the beginning, the first one of the 4 Golos in Klal Yisrael. We're going to go through Egypt. We're going to have a Golos of Babel. We're going to have a Golos of Modai. We're going to have Yavin. And we're going to have Edom, the Golos which we're in today, thousands of years. And when Yankov went down, people started asking questions, how are we going to survive this Golos? How are we going to manage it? How are we going to do this? So the Pasuk writes, Yankov went down to Mitzrayim. These are the names of his Shvatim. V'Yosef hoya b'Mitzrayim. Yosef was there. They didn't see their grandfather. They never saw great-grandfather. They never saw friends. But Yosef did it because he imbued them with this love of Torah and mitzvahs. He told them the stories of what he saw by his father and by his grandfather. And that's what Uncle Larry did. He told them what he saw by his father. I saw his grandfather yet. That's why the store stayed Shabbos thing. And when you give that over, that doesn't get lost. Pasuk says, Ashrei Ish, Yireas Hashem. Fortunate is a person who fears the Rebbeinu Shalom. B'mitzvoisav, and his mitzvahs chofetz ma'oid. He loves his mitzvahs. And the Medrash says on that, he loves the mitzvahs and not the reward of the mitzvahs. If a person loves the reward of the mitzvahs, what he's doing, what goes over to the children is not the mitzvah. It goes over what he loved. He wanted money, he wanted covet, he wanted this. So what goes over to the children is the covet and the money. So for the father, maybe did mitzvahs for covet, and the children will do for covet and for money. They'll do other things, worse things. But when you love mitzvahs, when it's been mitzvahs of chovetz moed, you know what the pasuk says? Gibor ba'aretz yir v'zaro yirish eretz. He will be a gibor. He was zoicha. He was zoicha tarichas yom b'shana. And his children remain zaro yirish eretz. That's the koyach that he had. That's what I told the book. We have to appreciate what it means to do a mitzvah. Thank the Rebbeinu Shalom for every mitzvah. We're holding before Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah we blow shofar, we blow twice. Once before Musaf, one answer, one sitting, standing. And the Gemara says because when the Sultan sees that we love mitzvahs, he gets quiet, he gets all nervous, he doesn't know what to say. If he sees people doing mitzvahs, okay, they're doing it. But when he sees that they love him, they machav the mitzvah, they blow once, they blow twice, he has nothing what to say. Uncle Larry, you're going now to the Kisei HaKoved. And you will meet your parents. Zayda. My Bob and Zayda. Judy. I'm sure my parents are going to come. I'm sure my brother Chaim, my brother Moshe, my brother Yellin, they're all going to come to see you. because you showed us this love of mitzvahs, what it means to be a Jew, and to love it. Tell the Rabbeinu Shalom. We can raise children in Aurora, Illinois. We sit Tisha B'Av. Because Klal Yisrael, there was a veil of the Meraglim. And the Baruch Hashem said afterwards, Mekatza now, just to get the point. Pasuk says, Chayoni num Hashem v'yimolei kvoid Hashem is kol haaretz. If they wouldn't have done the chet of the Meraglim, they would have gone on to Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael would have been the end of the world. The rest of the world would not have been with any Kedusha. Now that they did the chet of the Meraglim, and Moshe is not going to go into Eretz Yisrael, we're going to have to go into this Golus that we're living today. And we're going to go, the Pasuk says, V'chayoni num Hashem v'yimolei kvoid Hashem es kol haaretz. The entire world will be filled with covet of the Baruch. And therefore the Torah has to come. All this Europe, and now in America, which is the last stop. We'll go back and show that we can keep your Torah in Aurora, Illinois. And we can love it, and we can give it over. The Baruch Hashem should give, there should be a male choice for the Mishpocha, for my Aunt Evelyn, who stood with him all the years. Mamish, like one. It was always a yontif, and Aunt Evelyn and Uncle Larry were coming to us. Baruch Hashem should give you the koyach. The children and grandchildren. Be'ez Hashem Yisborach. This hemshech should continue. And the breiter mishpacha, the further mishpacha. If everybody give what he needs. I just said goodbye to him. He just took my hands and he gave me such a bracha. All the brachas should be mekuyim. And go to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Tell him we loved your mitzvahs here. And we kept them. Chayoni the Rebbeinu Shalom, you promised v'yimoli kvod Hashem is kol haaretz. We should be zoichet to see the kvod of the Rebbeinu Shalom filling the entire world. B'biyash Mashiach tzidkenu b'mheira b'yameinu mocha Hashem al kindima me'al koponim v'nemara me.
Mr. Yellin, Larry, Eliezer Ben Chaim, Menachem Mendel, what a loss for our community, for the Chicago community at large, for those that are left in Aurora, for us specifically at Park Plaza, where they lived for the last year or so. It's humbling to think about how much of an impact he made in such a short time. He left a great legacy. He was a vibrant part of the minyan, as people have mentioned. In the evenings, in the mornings, he was always there amongst the first people, wanting to know what they could do to improve the minyan, davening with us, a frequent member of the classes and the shiurim, and he left a tremendous impression on our community. Keeping the minyan going is always raising the bar for him, no matter where he was. As mentioned, whether they were walking to the shul in Aurora with the kids on Shabbos, in the snow, when nobody was there, and they came in all their snow clothes, and they got there, and there was nothing in the shul, and everyone was closed, and they had to walk all the way back. Or in Yehuda Moshe, moving right next to the shul, near the yeshiva. In the Pinsker building in Israel, how much they love being in Israel, and getting from the community got from them, to our community in Park Plaza, how much he gave to us, how much he was an impression. There are certain types of people that are different types of Jews. Mr. Yellin was a shul Jew. To him, the Beis HaKnesset, the house of prayer, was sacred. If he could find a minyan, no matter what they had to do for that, he would be there davening. Even in his later years, he had trouble seeing. He would have a big print sitter, and he'd be wanting to point out exactly where the place is, where he has to go, what he has to say, so he knows that he can daven with the shul and with the minyan. He was a man of tall physical stature, but he was looked up to in so many ways. He was looked up to for his stature as a person, as to who he was, not just into his tall appearance. The Mishnah tells us that there are different crowns There's the Keser of Malchus. There's the crown of the kingship. There's the Keser Kahuna. There's the crown of the Kahuna. There's the Keser Torah. There's the crown of the Torah. And there's the Keser Shem Tov Ola Agal Beim, that the crown of a good name surpasses it all. Larry was somebody, along with his dear wife Evelyn, who had a good name. If you mentioned the Yellins and you knew the Yellins, it was to know somebody good. It would bring a smile to your face if you mentioned the Yellins and you knew them. They were good people, the Keser Shem Tov. The family continues that great legacy of Larry, to be people where you mention them and you mention a good name. You mention someone that's great. The Medrash in Koheles says there are 3 types of names a person goes through in their life. There's the name that you're called by your parents, Eliezer. But what you're going to make of your life is not defined. Your life is unknown until you live it. Then there's the name you're called by the people around you. You're called by Acherim, other people call you that name. And then the Medrash says there's the name that you write for yourself. As you go through your life, you write that name for yourself. Larry wrote a great name for himself. He was a great person in so many respects, whether it was the efforts in the army, the Kiddush Hashem, the sanctification of God's name that he made in the army, in Europe, in the Philippines, starting a shul, and all the mitzvah work he did while he was overseas. He would tell us amazing stories of all the people that he touched. Or if it was the way he was Makadosh Shem Shemayim, he raised the name of heaven, the way he ran his business. People knew if they needed an appliance to go to Israel, they went to Broadway. And if it was the way that he acted with his family, the way he raised the girls, the way he raised the family, the way he acted with his dear wife of almost 75 years, 74 years together, amazing achievement. It was something that he raised his name. He inscribed that name, that third name, that it was a pleasure to know him, that it was a blessing to be next to him, and it was something that inspired people that were around him. He was such a sweet person. He had such a smile. He had such a chen, such a warmth. As Rabbi Augustine mentioned, he wouldn't tell you off for something that he didn't like. He would just tell you in the most sweet, gentle way. He would take your hand, and he would say, maybe we could do something a little different. He wanted to have a washing station near the shul. He liked to wash his hands right before davening. He learned so much from his Zaidi, Alav Shalom. He would always say, my Zaidi told me to do it like this. My Zaidi told me to make this bracha. My Zaidi told me this is how you do something. He had a tremendous connection with his grandfather, and he learned so much Yiddishkeit living in Aurora, of all places. And he gave us that sweetness. He gave us that respect and that admiration and that sweetness of being together. Rav Chaim Vital mentions that there are 3 types of fruits. There are 3 types of fruits. There are fruits that are hard on the outside. They're hard and they're difficult to break through like a nut, but when you get to the inside, you get to the sweetness. And there are some people that are like that they have a little bit of a difficult exterior. When you break through that exterior, then they're all sweetness. Then you have other types of fruits that are delicious on the outside, like a peach or a plum, but there's a hard pit in the middle. So that they appear nice, they appear okay, the person appears like that, but then when you get to the inside, there's a hard core. Finally, you have a third type of person, like a grape. A grape is delicious on the outside, delicious on the inside. You can eat the whole grape. You can enjoy it. It's sweet all around. Larry was such a person. He was sweet all around. There was only goodness that came from him. There was only nourishment and sukkah that he gave to us, chizuk, and encouragement. I'm going to remember so many lessons he taught me, so many lessons he left for the shul. We look forward to having many years together with the Yellins and Mrs. Yellin to grow and thrive and enjoy the mishpacha for many, many years to come. We wish a nechama to all the family, to Linda, to Susie, to Dina, to Sharon that's not here, and all the family, all the children, all the great-grandchildren should know you had an amazing Saba and Zaidi, a special, special family, and it should stay with you for many years to come. Hashem should remove all tragedy.
Every Shabbos afternoon in the summer when we were growing up, Dad would invite us to join him in the backyard, where we would sit on plastic lawn chairs, huddled over the Pirkei Avot. We reviewed Hillel's principle that in a place without leadership, one should strive to be a leader, and Rabbi Hanina's credo that if someone behaves in an ethical manner that endears himself to others, he sanctifies God's name. Those weren't just teachings Dad recited from the book. They were object lessons he exemplified wherever he went in life. Growing up as part of the only Orthodox family in Aurora, Illinois, Dad always remained true to his values, even when surrounded by those with different lifestyles. He often told us that he tried to work harder and perform better than his peers because he felt he was representing the Jewish people. When World War II broke out, other young men tried to avoid the draft, not Dad. He volunteered because, as he told us so many times, he wanted to fight the Nazis. He was a proud member of the 86th Infantry Black Hawk Division and a sergeant under General Patton, his hero. Dad served with such bravery and distinction that he earned several medals, including the Bronze Star. As one of the sole Orthodox Jews in his unit, he often volunteered to do the tough tasks nobody else could do, and his commander frequently called on him for difficult missions, ultimately earning him the respect of his comrades. But Dad never forgot his priorities. He utilized his breakfast time every morning to daven inside the Army barracks. One day, a general walked in and asked Dad's lieutenant whether Sergeant Yellin was ever given extra time to eat. The lieutenant said, "Oh no, that's not the Army protocol." The general insisted that Dad be given extra time every day to pray and eat breakfast. Several soldiers who overheard that subsequently asked Dad if they could join him for his morning prayers. Throughout his time in the Army, Dad aimed to keep kosher, even if it meant having very little to eat or trading his valuable commodities for kosher food. His very first night in the mess hall, he noticed they were serving meat and rice, so he asked to only have the rice. But the mess hall sergeant poured meat gravy all over the rice, so Dad ate nothing that night. On the first day of Pesach in 1945, Dad's commander asked him to lead a group of men to scout out what was happening near the Autobahn in Germany. Dad spied several wagons loaded with oversized pots, and he wanted to see who they were feeding. He ended up discovering a slave labor camp holding Jewish prisoners, so he brought his unit to help him liberate the camp, where he found many survivors there in poor condition. After getting them medical help, he helped organize a Mincha memorial service so that the survivors could say the El Mole Rachamim for those they had lost. It was likely the first minyan held in German soil at that time. Dad was so proud of his Army service, and my sisters and I grew up listening to his war stories, including how he captured German soldiers, celebrated Pesach at the Bear Factory in Cologne, and held Friday night minyan at General MacArthur's mansion in the Philippines. When he returned to civilian life, Dad continued to demonstrate leadership wherever there was a void, just as Hillel of Pirkei Avot had advised. Dad was studying at the University of Chicago when his father fell ill, so he returned home to help lead the family business. He succeeded in expanding Broadway Appliance and Furniture into a worldwide operation that put Aurora, Illinois on the map and drew such celebrities as the Shah of Iran and the Archbishop of Krakow, who later became the Pope. But despite this success, he would close shop on Friday afternoon before sundown. Everyone in Aurora, Illinois knew that this was the only establishment in town that didn't conduct business on the Jewish Sabbath. Our family walked 3 miles to Shul every week. Sometimes on a particularly cold Saturday, people in their cars would stop to offer us rides, and I, as a little girl, was sometimes a little tempted to take them up on it. But Dad just thanked them politely, and we kept walking. Although Dad never had the benefit of a yeshiva education, he was always motivated to learn Torah. If he couldn't go to Torah class in Chicago, he'd learn on the phone with a chavrusa. He always made an effort to teach us because we grew up attending public school. I still remember him introducing me to Gemara Baba Metzia when I was very young. At the time, I was a child, and the material was clearly above my head. But what wasn't lost on me was his passion for Torah study, which only seemed to grow throughout his years. Whenever he visited my family in Teaneck, the first thing he asked when he arrived was, "What time is minyan? Where can I catch a daf yomi shir?" He ended up completing the daf yomi 4 times. Dad was a Renaissance man with an insatiable intellectual curiosity and a penchant for questions. He read both the New York Times and Wall Street Journal daily, and he often compared the two. Growing up, whenever I had a writing assignment from school, nobody was more enthusiastic about it than Dad. "What's our thesis?" he'd say, as he pulled out a wad of paper to take notes. He'd dig into my books, searching for the perfect quote that would cement my argument. He also enjoyed discussing the stock market and debating politics. Our family has a wide range of political views, so over the years, there might have been a few feisty discussions around our dinner table. But Dad loved hearing everybody's perspective, and no matter how much we disagreed, we were always sad when it was time to go. After all, when it came to the really important things, we all agreed, like you haven't eaten a meal until you've had 2 desserts. You can't leave until you say goodbye 100 times. And we all loved Dad. Family was everything to Dad. After his father passed, he was very devoted to his mother, Dorothea, who spent almost every Shabbos, Yontif, and milestone with us. He was a loving husband. He was a loving husband to my mother for 74 years. They were an inseparable duo that made an enduring love story of epic proportions. He was a wonderful brother to his sister, Barbara Rosenfield and Robert Yellin, Olive Shalom. And he was the most amazing, loving father and grandfather. At the conclusion of Pirkei Avot, Rav Shimon ben Yehuda lists the gifts that befit the righteous. Among them is a long life. Dad didn't just lead a long life. He led a heroic, meaningful, and extraordinary life filled with love. We were truly blessed.
About 20 years ago, Dina and I bought Dad a baseball-style hat emblazoned with the words, World War II veteran. Dad regularly wore that hat on weekdays, and the responses it evoked, from sincere thank yous and handshakes from complete strangers, to my shul rabbi dedicating his shir in honor of the distinguished visitor, Sergeant Larry Yellin, to an impromptu standing salute from a group of young American soldiers at an airport gate, became the stuff of legend. Dad was indeed a World War II hero, a decorated combat veteran of both the European and Pacific theaters of war. But truth be told, he was a man who wore many hats: family man, businessman, local and Jewish community leader, supporter of shuls and yeshivas, world traveler, avid reader, and talented writer, just to name a few. And so, standing here on this sad, heartbreaking day, it is hard not to feel a sense of total inadequacy to the task at hand. It is impossible not to fall short when trying to capture in a few words the essence of a man like my father-in-law, who never fell short in anything he did. So, Dad, at the outset, I ask you for mechila, not only for the shortcomings of this hesped, but for any of my shortcomings in giving you the proper kavod over the years. In explaining the purpose of a hesped, Rav Nissen Alpert, the late Rosh Kollel of Yeshivas Rabbeinu Yitzchak Elchanan, writes, Ela shetachlit hahesped hu lekayem et hamet b'chayim, umimasav hatovim l'saper mishivcho sheilmedu b'nei adam mimenu. That the purpose of the hesped is to bring the departed to life, to recount his praises and good deeds, so that people will learn from him. My father-in-law was indeed a praiseworthy man of many good deeds that we could all learn from. And today, I highlight just a few. One of the first impressions I had of Dad was the exemplary respect, honor, and affection he gave to his mother, our beloved Mama. He would have her sit beside him at the head of the table and brought her on all of our family journeys to Israel, Florida, the Catskills, but mostly just observing how he spoke to and indulged his mother was a tremendous Musar Haskell for me. The Gemara, Brachos Daf Chet Amud Aleph, relates the following. Amrulei leRabbi Yochanan, Ika Savi beBavel. Rabbi Yochanan was told that there are people of advanced age in Babylonia. Tama ve'amar, he was confounded and said, Leman yirbu yemechem v'yemei v'nechem ala adama. It is written in Sefer Devarim, so that your days will be lengthened and the days of your children upon the land of Israel, Ketiv. Aval bechutz la'aretz lo, but not outside of the land of Israel. Kevan da'amri le mekadme umechashche leve kenishta. When he was told that the people in Babylonia go early in the morning and then late in the evening to shul, Amar hainu de'ahani lahu. That is what was effective for them in extending their lives. Dad was an ish beit hakneset, as Rabbi Allen said, a shul man, a man you could rely upon to form a minyan, who helped build and lead shuls, be it in Aurora, Chicago, 22 Pinsker in Yerushalayim, and as mentioned, even the Philippines as a young infantryman. He was usually the first to arrive in shul and the last to leave. He davened at his own pace, with attention and devotion to each and every word. And the highest praise he could give someone was that they davened like they were truly standing before Hashem. His daily planning revolved around shul. Before heading back to Yerushalayim from a trip to Eilat back in 1993, pre-cell phone era, Dad and I went to the shul in the hotel to daven mincha, but found that there weren't the requisite 10 men for a minyan. We set out on the road to Jerusalem with Dad driving, and when we reached a certain junction, instead of heading east towards Jerusalem, he drove west towards Yavne. I was puzzled by this. It turns out that he was familiar with a shul in Yavne where he knew he could definitely catch Mincha and Mariv with a minyan, which is indeed what transpired. When at one point Dad was confused and disoriented in the hospital, he told Dina that he sees a minyan in the room and asked her to inquire as to what time they're starting to daven. Ve'ani tefilati, davening, minyan, and shul were at the essence of who Dad was. Inseparable from his love of tefillah was his love of Torah. On several occasions, he mentioned to me that he had to make up for the time lost not having had a formal yeshiva education in his youth. He never missed an opportunity to attend a shiur and was unique among the students of Daf Yomi in that he really wanted to understand each and every line on the daily daf in depth. His devotion to minyan and Torah, as well as his singular ability to connect to people, can be illustrated by what would happen after my in-laws would visit us in Queens and later in Teaneck. Invariably, someone from my shul would approach me and with a worried look ask, "Where is your father-in-law? I haven't seen him at the Ashkama Minyan or at the Daf Yomi shiur." Imagine the surprised look I would receive when I would explain that my in-laws actually lived in Illinois. Another example of the impression that Dad left on myself and others was in the business setting. The Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph, famously relates in the name of Rabbah the questions that are asked in the heavenly court of one who has departed from this world. The first question asked is, Nasata v'natata be'emunah? Did you conduct business with emunah, with faith? What does it mean to conduct business with emunah? We know that there are many halachot related to the fine minutiae of business dealings. So why not ask, Nasata v'natata al piha halacha? Did you follow the fine letter of the law when conducting business? I'd like to suggest that precisely because business is completely ben adam lechavero, between person to person, and is almost invariably tied to the ulterior motives of financial success and social standing, that it is here that the level of one's faith and fidelity to Hashem and His Torah are most strongly tested. Over the course of his long and storied business career, my father-in-law passed the test with flying colors. As most of you know, my father-in-law was president of his family business, Broadway Furniture and Appliance. He created and led the highly successful overseas operations of the company, which included supplying and servicing Olim with high-quality appliances. I can't say how often I heard people mention to me, many times without even knowing my relationship to Dad, that Broadway was their place to purchase appliances because Mr. Yellin was such an honest man. One story that stands out for me was when I encountered the brother of a friend outside my shul. It turns out that he had gone on Aliyah with his family. He related all of the challenges he had encountered during the Aliyah process, but noted that the easiest part of all was getting his appliances. That really sparked my curiosity. So he explained that there is an appliance store in a place I probably never heard of called Aurora, Illinois, whose owner is an upright and honest man named Mr. Yellin. And that when Mr. Yellin heard that this young man was going to Israel to study Torah, he significantly discounted the appliances to near cost. I can say without hesitation that my father-in-law, Nasa v'natan be'emunah, the same emunah, the same faith with which he conducted himself in every other area of his life. It is impossible to separate anything that Dad did without mentioning the great love of Dad's life, my mother-in-law, Shetibadeh L'chaim Tovim. Mom, you were Dad's rock, love, best friend, and soulmate. You sustained him in the best and worst of times. We love you and will do everything we can to stay strong together, just as Dad would want. Dad, Eliezer ben Chaim Menachem Mendel Udevora Esther, you are truly a second father to me. Kashe alai predatcha. Your departure is hard on me, hard on all of us. I stand in awe and salute you, not just for all you did, but all the more for whom you were. I will miss your affection, wisdom, and encouragement. The memories of our wonderful times together burn bright in my mind. You always put the interests of your family first, and I know that you will be a Melitz Yosher for all of us and for all of Klal Yisrael. Teheh nafsho tzrura b'tzrura chayim.
My grandfather, Sergeant Larry Yellin, a man of God, a family man, a businessman, an explorer, and a war hero. He truly has done it all. He was a chef at a restaurant, he was a soldier, he managed a highly successful appliance business, he raised a Jewish family, he even won a sailboat in a raffle. I'm missing a lot, but the point is we'd all be here for weeks if we try to recount, probably months, years, if we try to recount everything he's done. One of my favorite stories he's told me is when he recounted his deployment to the Philippines during World War II. During his time there, he practically adopted and domesticated a wild monkey, which would then accompany him on patrols. The way he spoke about this monkey, I could tell he had a lot of respect and loyalty towards it. Of course, I asked him to prove that this monkey actually existed. He immediately walked on over to the bookshelf, opened up his World War II album, and showed me a photograph of him with that monkey. He spoke to me only very briefly about the struggles of the environment he was in, he was put in during the war. He knew why he was there, and more importantly, he had pride in it, he had pride in the mission. I'll always remember the lunch I had with him in Chicago when he told me how he jumped at the opportunity to volunteer for the US Army. There was such a high level of pride and confidence in the way he said that. It really stood out to me. Sometimes it was hard to have a conversation with him. He would want to hear about, everything I did. He'd ask me about school, about grades, about work, about investments, and I'd want to hear about everything that he was doing. He really wanted to know about everything going on in my life. I'm going to miss that. Not only did he leave a real impact on me, but he left one on many, many others. Earlier this summer, on Memorial Day weekend, I flew to Chicago to help Saba and Safta and to spend time with them. On Sunday, I drove them to the old house in Aurora. When we got there, I noticed American flags neatly placed all around the front lawn. And the neighbor, a Vietnam War veteran, came up to me and said, "Son, I had no idea Larry was coming, but if there's one person in this town who I know should have some flags up by their house on Memorial Day weekend, it's your grandfather. Your grandpa's a great, great man. Please make sure he notices those flags." It still hasn't fully settled in that he and I won't be able to argue and bet against each other on stocks and investments. I won't be able to hear any new stories from him. All I can do now is act in a way I know he'd be proud of. I've said this a few times, but if you're able to live, act, and do half, maybe even a quarter of the things my grandfather, Sergeant Larry Yellin, was able to do against all odds, that would make you a success. Thank you.
As some of you might know, my husband is a speechwriter, and I did not actually show him what I was going to say today because I really hope that I can talk a little bit and that you will indulge me as I tell you about how I won the genetic lottery. I want to start with what I loved about my grandfather. I loved to argue with him. Our dining table was a place of fierce ideas and debate. I usually thought I was right. I still do. But he had better facts than I did. And sometimes, and I'm a bit embarrassed to admit it, I would cheat a little bit. In particular, I feel guilty about one time that I vastly overstated US migrant policy, claiming that I knew better because I worked at the State Department. My grandfather never held it against me or slowed on debating with me. Every meal, it was a new issue. A couple years ago, I had the chance to do some debating on Fox News, and I loved it. I felt like it was like being with my grandparents, except nobody was ever as smart. Let me tell you what I hated. I hated being asked to fix his computer. Every visit, he'd ask, and I would overpromise, thinking that it would be easy, and it never was. Somehow, despite his age, and as he aged, he stayed just as tech savvy as me, even when I was working at a tech company. He once asked me to help him get on Twitter, and I assured him that this would be easy. We would be at the pool reading Trump tweets in no time. Hours later, after basically trying to circumvent every single one of Twitter's verification protocols, I gave up. There were very few things my grandfather couldn't do that I could. My grandfather gave me my first job. Working at Broadway Appliance was a summer pastime. Clocking in and out, sweeping the floor, watching him with his gun, a perfect American summer. I particularly loved loading up the Oldsmobile with electronics and driving around Chicago, hand-delivering 220-volt items to families making Aliyah. We would stay out so late that when we were done, my sisters and I would climb into the trunk and fall asleep where the furniture had been for the long drive back to Aurora. It was such a happy memory. I once went to Thailand for a week, where for hours a day I would meditate and sit with my eyes closed and watch my breath. And after a while, I noticed a lot of happy thoughts, mostly of Safta's cooking and summers in Aurora. Those were magical times. Tending the tomatoes with my grandfather, the reading program at the library, walking with my grandparents on Shabbos
and reciting poems. Saba would always tell me to work on my elocution. I catch myself doing the same with my children. I don't know how you say goodbye to someone who was larger than life. So I want to end with where I began. I was right on Iran. I was right on Obama. I know that's cheating. I just don't want the conversation to end.
Call on Rabbi Schmeltzer to come and say the Molly.
El malay rachamim sheichem bam beroimim hamet zei menuchon lechoino al kanfei ashchino b'ma'alois kedoshim utoirim kezoya harakia mazirin es nishmas Rav Eliezer ben Chaim Menachem Mendel she'olach li'olamoi ba'avur Shemishpachto not to talk about the scores nishmasoi Began Eden te menuchasoi Lochein balo rachamim Yastireu b'seiser kanafov li'olamim V'yitzroyer b'tzroyer hachayim es nishmasoi Adonai hu nachlosoi V'yanuach B'shalom al mishkavoi v'noimar amen.
Our service is concluded at this time. Interment will take place at Har HaMenuchot in Jerusalem. Shiva will take place in Israel, 22/5 Pinsker Street in Yerushalayim. Also, that information's on your folder. It's also for those of you who are online, that information is available online. It'll be traditional Shiva. Memorial contributions could be made to Congregation Yehuda Moshe, 4721 West Toohey Avenue in Lincolnwood, or to the Hebrew Theological College, 7135 Carpenter Road in Skokie. Both the hard address and the electronic address are located here. In just a moment, I'm going to ask the pallbearers to please join us. The pallbearers will be Moshe and Daniel Fuchsbrummer, Lou Weiss, Dan Sherwin, Adam Fisher, Jeffrey Lefkowitz, and Daniel Gutstein. At this time, I would please ask everyone to please rise if you're able as we escort Mr. Yellin from the chapel.